Yes, as every 2 weeks, I want to welcome you to our SPCLBcast seminar. This week, I'm very glad to welcome long-term friend and collaborator Jesper, and Nikolai will introduce him. So enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Torsten, and thank you, Jesper, for being here. And I hope everyone enjoyed supercomputing instead of Bcast 2 weeks ago. Without further ado, Jesper is a professor at the Vienna University of Technology, where he runs the Parallel Computing Group. Prior to that, among many other positions, he was the chief researcher at NEC Labs Europe, where he did extensive work on optimizing MPI collectives, especially for vector machines. And we'll let Jesper talk about the latest work he and his group are doing on MPI collectives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nikolai, thank you, Torsten, and thanks to all of you that I can be here. I would, of course, have loved to be in Zurich, but things are the way they are. I hope you can all hear me, and I hope the recording will go well, that you can see the talk afterwards. So I will talk about some recent work that I've done together with my colleague Sascha Hunold, also here from TU Wien, on decomposing MPI collectives for exploiting multi-lane communication. And I will explain to you what this is all about. So let's get started. There's code here, so this is pretty much a lot of implementation work, and you can see the code. So here on this GitHub address, you can see the code and study the code and experiment with it if you're interested. And this is based on a paper that we had this year, also virtually, unfortunately, in the cluster conference with the same title. So let's get started. So here, our motivation is we're looking at standard HPC systems. So a common or modern HPC system is something like this. So we have compute nodes, quite a lot of them, that are interconnected with some network. So it's a InfiniBand or special purpose network and a relatively large number of such nodes. On the compute nodes, there are several cores. On modern systems, quite a lot of cores, so 32, 48, whatever. And nodes also have internal structures, so organized into smaller units, so sockets, whatever. That will not play such much of a role here. So we have at least this two-level structure for compute nodes with shared memory interconnected via a network. And in this talk here, I'm totally ignoring accelerators, so you can blame me later for that. And such systems are typically still programmed with MPI explicitly or maybe implicitly via libraries, and that's the situation. The new thing, or the thing that we are especially looking at here is the following. So some systems actually have not only one network, but several networks, and many systems actually have many connections to the network per compute node. So more than just one core can use a network at a time. So the observation here is that nodes sometimes provide higher off-node bandwidth than what can be saturated by a single core. And that is the important thing here. Okay, so here are 2 examples. So our own small system is actually quite a powerful system in this direction. So we have 36 nodes with 2 Intel Skylake processors, so 2 times 16 cores on the nodes, and 36 of these nodes. And we actually have two omnipath networks here. So there's really kind of double bandwidth on the network. Another example that we also used in this study here is one of the larger systems here in Vienna, the VSC3 cluster, which has about 2,000 nodes and with 2 times 8 cores. And it has only a single InfiniBand network, but on the nodes there are 2 adapters to the networks. So in this sense, more than one core at a time can go to the network. And the interesting thing that this has come into fashion again. So several of the high-ranked systems on the top 500 lists have these properties that there's more network bandwidth than a single core can saturate. Okay, so here's the example from the VSC3 machine. You can see here the diagram. So there are these two host card adapters or whatever they are called to the network. And what we can see here is that the MPI process on different sockets may be able to use the network concurrently. Okay, so here is sort of the abstraction of this. We have the compute nodes, and we have the two sockets. On each socket, there's an access to the network. So we call this system a two-lane system, and here with actually two physical lanes. The way that we use such a system might be as follows, that we have assumed that we have virtual lanes, so we have K prime virtual lanes, and they share these two physical lanes. So K is the number of physical lanes, and K prime is the number of virtual lanes. And our assumption is that if we have K prime larger than K, then there is, of course, a slowdown, or they have to share the effective bandwidth, but the slowdown is only by a factor we have an improvement of a factor of K prime, the number of physical lanes that we have. So the effective bandwidth is something like K over K prime times the bandwidth of one processor. Okay, so we just assume that when we have more than the K physical lanes, there's a proportional sharing of the bandwidth. Okay, so here are the questions that we are posing. Can such a multi-lane capability be exploited at the MPI application level? That is our first question. The second question is, can MPI collective be designed to take advantage of multi-lane capabilities in a provably good way? So what can we do? And our third question is related to how is the actual software? So do MPI collectives, as we find them in standard MPI library implementations, take advantage of these multi-lane capabilities that the hardware might have? So how good are current MPI libraries in this respect? And the fourth question, which I will not really go into in this talk here, but for me, the interesting one, an interesting question, how can we design good algorithm and implementation for such a multi-lane system? So what are our reasonable assumptions, and how do we design the algorithm so that we can prove something? Okay, and these questions, of course, are relevant for applications programmers. They are relevant for the MPI developers and for algorithm designers. Okay, so I will go through these questions and give our current answers to them. So on question 2, we are of course not the first one to consider this. It's an old issue, and many people have looked in this direction. So in particular, there are quite a few papers by the group of DK Panda. They call their designs multi-leader designs, and they have done this then for several of the MPI collectives. We do it differently. We don't explicitly try to find leaders and divide the work like this, but that is some of the related work in this direction. There's an old paper by Kühnemann, Rauber, and Rönger, where they also do a kind of decomposition somewhat similar to what I will show you now, but they there are certain things that as far as I can see that they do wrong. Okay, so there have been work, of course, in this direction. So let's see what we are doing now. Our approach is the following. Our focus is algorithmic on splitting the communication. So if you have a communication problem of size C, so C is some count of elements, this is the total size of the problem, and our focus is on splitting the problem into smaller problems, n smaller problems, each of size C or n, where n is the number of MPI processes that we have per compute node, and then solve these smaller problems concurrently. Our optimality criterion is based on the amount of data that we communicate in and out of the nodes. So we are optimal if there's only one C data in or out of the nodes. Our implementation, I will show you a little bit, concrete implementations are all done on top of MPI. So we employ solely functionality in MPI. But a lot of this, so we use the collectives, and here the MPI in place option is very important, and we of course assume that libraries implement this so that there's actually a copy operations being saved. Yeah, we use a lot of communicator management. We use the derived data types to sometimes reorganize our data. I will show you a concrete example where this is needed. And we use the attribute mechanism of MPI a lot to hide all these things so that our implementations actually look fully standalone as the MPI collectives, and you can use them right away out of the box. I hope our implementations are correct. Maybe you will find interest in looking at that. And we can, in contrast to some of the work of Panda, we cover all the regular MPI collectives. Okay, so let's look at the first question, which was if these multi-lane capabilities can be exploited with and by MPI. And to answer this question, we have designed two benchmarks. So the first benchmarks, we assume that we have C elements that are to be sent and received per compute node. And what we then do is that we divide these C elements into blocks, to K blocks of C over K elements. And then we send these or receive these elements over K virtual lanes. Yeah? And our elements here in the study is MPI in, but that can have been whatever, that is not important. So C is the amount of data, and we split it into K blocks. And based on what I said, our abstraction of the multi-lane system, our hypothesis here is that if we have K prime physical lanes, then we can be K prime times faster than if we use only one lane, as long as this number K of virtual lanes is larger than K prime, the number of physical lanes. So this is our hypothesis, and we will check to what extent this is fulfilled. Our next benchmark is the following. Here we look at how many concurrent collective operations can be sustained concurrently. So we have again C elements. This is the problem size of some collective. Here in the benchmark, we use MPI all-to-all, so the most communication intensive collective. And then we do concurrent collective operations, so concurrent all-to-alls on these problems of size C on K virtual lanes. Yeah? And our hypothesis here is that, again, if we have K prime physical lanes, then the slowdown for doing this compared to doing only one collective is only by this factor of K, so the virtual lanes divided by K prime, the physical lanes, as long as we use at least as many virtual lanes as we have physical lanes. Yeah. So these are the two things that we do in order to gauge if we, as MPI programmers, can actually see these physical multi-lane capability. And how does it look? So here are the results. So here first, for the first benchmark on our own small cluster, so as I said, 36 times 32 cores, and we used here the OpenMPI 4.0.2 implementation. What can we see here? So for very small counts, then there is not so much to see, but as soon as a count gets larger, we see that we can exploit these virtual lanes. And actually, too, what is surprising is that it's considerably more than the expected factor of 2. So recall that we have 2 physical networks, but we see more than a factor of 2 improvements. In the middle range, and as counts get larger and larger, it gets closer to the exact factor of 2. So the last one with a very large count, that is really the textbook behavior. We see going from 1 to 2 virtual lanes, we have exactly the improvement of the expected factor of 2. So this is very nice. So in that sense, our small cluster behaves exactly as we expect and nicely. How does it look on the larger system? So the Vienna scientific cluster, VSC3, here we used 100 nodes with 16 cores per node, and here we use the Intel MPI library. And again, we see, okay, for very small counts, there's not so much to see. There's a slight improvement. As in the middle range, as when the count gets larger, we see an improvement, which is actually slightly better than the expected factor 2. But we see here also that we need to use more than 2 virtual lanes. So the improvement, for some reason, and this probably has to do with the pinning of the process and other things. I will not go into that here. We see that we need to use more than 2 virtual lanes in order to see this improvement. And again, for the very large count, we see close to a factor of 2 as it should be. But again, we need more than at least 4 virtual lanes. Okay, here's the benchmark 2. So benchmark 2 was this: we try to do concurrent collectives all with the same problem size, so concurrent all-to-alls. And here we see also very nicely for our small Hydra system that we can sustain at least 2 MPI all-to-all operations at the cost of 1. Yeah. So and actually more when the problem size gets very large. So you see at the right 2 physical lanes we have exactly the same time, and then time starts to increase when we have more than 2 virtual lanes employed. Yeah. So this is also fine. We can sustain at least 2 concurrent all-to-alls, and the slowdown is proportional, or even better than proportional to the number of physical lanes, as our hypothesis said. Here on the VSC3 system, sort of the same thing. Slightly bad for the very large problem. There we see that there's an increase from 1 to 2 virtual lanes that should not be. So here we saturate apparently the network for the very large problems. But in the mid-range, we can sustain at least 2 all-to-all operation in the same time as just 1 all-to-all operation. Okay, so these are our basic hypotheses for our approach to decomposing the collectives, and they seem to be reasonably fulfilled on these 2 systems that we have here. So let's go into the second question: can MPI collectives be designed to exploit multiple lanes? And this is our approach, which we call decomposing MPI collectives. So the idea here is simple. We have some collective, big C, on a problem of size C. So C is some count. Then we split it just into n parts. So n, little n here is the number of nodes. On the number of MPI processes per node, and big N is the number of nodes. Yeah? And then we do n concurrent collectives on k equal to little n virtual lanes. So we let all the MPI processes on the node do the collective operation or a collective operation, but each on a problem of size only C over N. Yeah? And this has, of course, this nice property that we are after, that the total amount of data in and out of the node will be only C in total. Yeah. So when we do it like this, that we actually use as many virtual lanes as there are processes on the nodes, we call these the full lane collectives, and that's what we are looking at. And the bad thing sometimes, as we will see, is that doing this splitting into smaller parts sometimes incurs an overhead, which is unpleasant and that we cannot really hide. So I will show you, but still the performance, maybe it's not as harmful as it looks, but we have this problem, and so there's more work. Or to say it another way, this approach works very well for some of the collectives, and for some of the collectives it introduces a certain overhead to do this splitting. And sometimes there's also a recollection phase at the end of the collective. We will see that. Okay, so let's go a little bit into the concrete implementation. So we come with some communicator COM, and then we first split this communicator into communicators for the nodes. So on each node, there's a communicator spanning the processes on the node. And then we split also into lanes. So we have for each lane, so we have n virtual lanes. So we have n communicators for each process, which spans all the processes on the other nodes. Yeah. And then we use this splitting to decompose the collective into operations on the node communicator and on the lane communicator. And of course, all this splitting and management of communicators is expensive, so we do that only once. So the idea is that when we use one of our collectives, it is looked up if the communicators have already been split. If not, this is being done and things are being cached away, and then we can amortize this splitting overhead. And the user of our implementation will not see these things at all. And of course, there's a restriction here, as you have already, perhaps if you think along with what I say, you have seen that I assume here that the communicator is regular. So by this, I mean that we have the same number of MPI processes per node, and in addition, that these in the original communicator, these processes are ranked consecutively. And if this is not the case, this will be discovered by our implementation, and it will just fall back to other collectives or the normal collectives. So this is something which always works, and in a good case where we have a regular communicator, these collectives, these implementations are being used transparently. Yeah, and regular collectives is not, I think, such a big restriction. ComWorld is a regular communicator, and many applications will work on regular communicators. But of course, as MPI is a very powerful thing, and not every communicator is regular. And this is perhaps something that one could look into. How can this restriction be lifted? How much can it be lifted? And well, some things are obvious, some things are maybe not quite so obvious. But for now, we have regular communicators. So this is how it looks. Here is our big communicator spanning all the processes on the compute nodes, and you see here that it is consecutively ranked. So the first little n on the first node, then the next little n on the next node, and so on. And then we do the splitting first into the node comps. So these are this olive green thing here. And there we see on the node communicator, the processes are then ranked from 0 to little n minus 1. And we have such a node communicator, of course, for all the nodes. So each process on a node can, on this communicator, communicate with the other processes on the node and use the collective operations. And then comes the lane communicator. So this splits vertically here. So for each process, so let's say in process 3 on each node is connected with all the other process number 3s on all the other nodes in the lane communicator for process 3. Yeah. So for each process on each node, there's a lane communicator which connects this process with all the other process with the same rank on the other nodes. Yeah. So we have exactly, this is the lane communicators. So there are as many node communicators as there are nodes, and there are as many lane communicators as there are MPI processes on the nodes. Okay, and now it should be easy to see how we can then decompose the collectives. So let's look at the broadcast. Collective first. So let's assume that the root is sitting here on the red one on the first node. Then what we have to do there is to split the broadcast problem, so with count C into n smaller pieces of size C over n, and we do this with an MPI scatter operation. Yeah? And if the count is not divisible exactly by n, then we have to use the irregular scatter V operation. So that's of course no big deal. Let's just assume that it divides exactly. So we do an MPI scatter. Then we have n smaller broadcast problems, each of size C or n, and then we use simultaneous MPI broadcasts on these problems of size C or n on the lane communicators. Then we have all the data on all the nodes, and then we need on all the nodes to collect for each process the data together. So there's an all gather operation then on the nodes at the end, and then we are done. And of course, if it doesn't divide exactly N into C, then we need to use the altogether V operation. There's no big deal. So here's the code. Some details, of course, left out, but that's basically it. We have the decomposition. We look at the root node, and on the root node we do the scatter V operations into the smaller problems, and we do the concurrent broadcasts on the lane communicators, and then we do at the end on all the nodes the altogether V operation. Let me just check me. Okay, sorry, I thought that maybe you had interrupted me. Okay, so this is this, and the red thing, the altogether V, that's of course a certain overhead, as we will see, which is unpleasant in this implementation here, and it would be interesting to find a way around this problem. So let's summarize what the round and communication complexity is of this operation. So the maximum amount of data that goes in and out of a node is C. So this is good. We don't sacrifice any bandwidth by sending the data more than once out of some node or whatever. So this is very good. And the round complexity is sort of the following. If we analyze these collectives into communication rounds, we have then log n rounds on the node for the scatter operations. Then we have log of capital N on the lane communicators. And then unfortunately we have another log little n for the altogether V. And log of little n plus log of big N is at most log of P plus 1. So this is the optimal number of rounds that we can do. And then unfortunately we have this log of little n for the extra altogether V operation. But the important thing here is that the bandwidth is good. Data go in and out of the node only once. So for large problems, this might actually bring us something. Here's another one. It gets now a little bit messy. So here's the scan code. Nobody looks into scan. So this is just to, maybe it's a pity. Scan is an important collective, and this is just to show that with the same idea we can also do the scan operations. So again, the same thing. We first have to split the problem, and here we do this with the help of MPI reduce scatter or MPI reduce scatter block. Then we have n smaller problems of size C or N. On these problems, we do concurrently XScan operation over the lane communicators. In order to see that we don't do too much with the data or ensure this, here we need to use MPI in place and assume that certain copies are not being made. So then the MPI XScan. Then we unfortunately have to do a full scan on the node. So that's the MPI scan on the node communicator that you see. And then at the end, we need to put the partial results together on the node. So first we need to collect these pieces, scanned pieces of CON with an altogether operation, and then a local reduction. So this is our scan implementation. Again, we see here that there's some penalty, so 2 times log of little n in the number of rounds compared to log p, the optimal number of rounds. But again, the important thing is, or the good thing is that the amount of data in and out of the nodes is only C, so the problem size. Here's a nice one, just to show you a case where we don't have any overhead. So this is reduce scatter block, so the regular version of reduce scatter. And this consists basically just of a reduced scatter first on the node, and then a reduced scatter on the lanes, and that's all. So here we of course have the optimal number of rounds. In order that this works, there's a certain trick needed. We need to permute the input first to get things in the right order as the MPI specification prescribes. And that we do with data types. So we set up some clever data types. I will not go into this here. You can study it if you want. a data type which describes exactly how things are to be permuted, and that of course depends on the sizes of the node and lane communicators. And then we do a self-copy. We do that with send-receive. We copy these data to itself using the data types. Then the permutation is done in advance. And then it's just a reduce scatter on the node com and then reduce scatter on the lane com, and then we're done. Okay, so MPI data types are really handy here they do all the work for us. We don't have to write up or code this permutation of the input which is necessary here. So this was an example of a nice one where the number of rounds is approximately log p, so at most log p plus 1. So here we are also good in the number of communication rounds. Okay, so this is the idea, and as you can see, or as you can guess, this can work for all the regular MPI collectives. So we have full implementation of this for broadcast, gather, scatter, and so on and so forth. So all of them based only solely on MPI collectives and data types and everything that we have in MPI. And as I said, the MPI in place is important for the implementation and also for the analysis, that we can show that we don't copy data around more than needed. And as we saw, sometimes things are good, so reduce gather are also good. And sometimes there's this overhead that we need to do an extra operation on the nodes, either in advance to split the data or at the end to collect the pieces together. And I mentioned also that here we assume that the communicators are regular, so same number of processes per node and consecutively ranked. Okay, and here's the full table with the, and you can see here which ones are good. The important thing is that they all communicate only C element in and out of the nodes. And here in the last part, you see also here the communication lower bound is based on a sequential, so round robin algorithm. Of course, you can use other all algorithms, but that increases the amount of data. So that's another issue. But all the data, also for all the data in and out of the nodes is only C. Okay, so this was our idea. Now we come to the third question, looking into a concrete MPI library. So the question is, do MPI collectives in common MPI libraries actually exploit multiple lanes? So putting in a different way, how well are they doing in comparison to the implementations, to the full lane implementation that I just described? Yeah? Okay, so if we do this comparison, that will indicate, of course, it's no proof. An MPI library can do many things. There can be many different algorithms. But if things are worse in an MPI library, it might indicate that, well, they are actually not exploiting the multi-lane capabilities. Or there might be other problems in the MPI library. But it's a good indication. So that's what we do. We compare MPI libraries to our implementation. Yeah? And our expectation, our pious hope here is that the MPI library performs at least as well as these multi-lane decompositions that I have just given, so that in some sense they exploit these multi-lane capabilities. Yes, and if they don't, then there's something wrong with the MPI library. And the repair would be to take the implementations that we have given here and just plug them into the library instead. So this is this performance guideline idea. We have an implementation of something in terms of MPI, and if the MPI library is not up to scratch, there's something wrong, and you can just take this template implementation here and use this as your implementation in the MPI library. So how do things look? So we looked at some of the collectives, and there are also some technical reports from us where you see more experiments. So here, the broadcast thing, so we have done three things. So there's a native MPI implementation here again with OpenMPI. The native one, then the blue one is the full lane implementation, and then we also compare to what can be called a standard hierarchical implementation. So the hierarchical implementation is one where you collect the data to only one process and then let this process do all the communication. So with this idea, you also have these optimalities that the data go in and out only once. Okay, so how are things here? So here's on our Hydra cluster with OpenMPI. What we look for is that the should be a factor of 2 better from an implementation which does not use multi-lanes. And here in the mid-range, we see that it is much, much better. So that is the red arrow, and that indicates that there's here something really bad with the MPI library, with broadcast in this range. And that continues at the very end. Our expected improvement is sort of in the ballpark of a factor of 2, a bit more. So this might simply indicate, okay, that the OpenMPI implementation does not use multi-lanes. It does not ripe this opportunity that is there for using both networks. But in the middle range, it indicates that there's something really bad with this MPI library. Okay, and the yellow one in the middle is we have enabled inherent multi-lane support, so what is claimed for OpenMPI, and that does not bring anything here, as we can see. Okay, on the VSC3, things are the same for small data. There's not much improvement as stated, so that is maybe also not surprising. There's not so much to split. As data get larger, we see a large improvement, and in the higher range, so medium-large counts, we see much more than a factor of 2. So again, this indicates that there's a problem here with the native. So this is Intel MPI for broadcasting in this range. Yeah? And okay, is this relevant broadcast for such large counts? As far as I know, it is. So I have heard of applications that use a lot of broadcast for large counts. So they would, of course, like to see a good broadcast implementation also for large counts. And these experiments here indicate that this MPI library is certainly not doing as well as it should. And for the very large counts, things looks relatively good. Also good in the sense of our expectations. So we are about a factor of 2 better than the Intel MPI. Here is for all gather on the Hydra cluster. So the green one in the middle indicates that we are on the expectation, so some factor 2, 3 improvement. And then there's something weird happening, and we don't know what the reason is. For the very large count with all gather, our implementation full lane is actually worse than both the native and the hierarchical implementation. So they use some other all-gather algorithm apparently for large data. And we should look more into this, and I'm sure that things can be done here. Here is the result on the VSC3 with all-gather, and we see here for small counts problems with the native all-gather. Our implementations are much faster than they should be compared to the native one. And for the large all-gather problem here, our full lane implementation is a factor of not quite 2, but somewhat better than the native one, as we would hope for. Here's all reduce in the mid on the Hydra cluster with OpenMPI in the mid-range. Things are as according to expectation. For the small counts, again, problems with all reduce for this library. Our implementation are much, much better. That should not be. And for the very large all reduce problem, we are not doing as well as a native one. So something to look into. Here on the VSC3, there we fare better all over the place. For small counts, there's here a severe problem with the Intel MPI. And here's the scan thing. And I don't know if it is relevant to use a scan for very large counts. Maybe not. maybe it is, but scan is there and it should of course perform. And here we see with the OpenMPI on our cluster, terrible things with the scan. It was so bad that for the large count, we couldn't even show the native MPI scan. So this is entirely broken here. And in the small to mid-range, we see that the difference is just huge. So probably there's something really bad with scan in this MPI library. And I think that scan deserves to be done better. There are people using scan. For certain algorithms, scan is just an essential building block, and it should perform also in MPI libraries. And we see here that from these kind of experiments that there might be some severe problems. And the same with the Intel MPI, it's not quite as bad, but it is bad. So for the large count, you see that we are our implementation are several factors better than the Intel MPI implementation of scan. Okay, so these problems, that is much more than can be accounted for by not being multi-lane in the Intel MPI. There are other things that are bad. So it seems that scan in some MPI libraries have not really been treated well. Maybe they are using some old algorithms or whatever. So this is interesting. I think this kind of experimental work, which is directed by expectations, so our performance guidelines, gives a lot of insight into the quality of MPI implementation, and it points to interesting problems that need to be solved. Okay, so this concludes sort of what I wanted to say. So our fourth question is how can we design provably good algorithms in such a model where we assume that there are k lanes that can operate? Yeah? And I think this is an extremely interesting question. So what is a good model for this? So what do we assume? There can be k-way communication out of the node, and maybe concurrently there can be communication inside the node. Maybe a process can be engaged in both communication on the network and inside the node. What is the right balance? What is our model going to be, and what can we do with such a model? And having the right model, could we solve these problems that we saw with broadcast, for instance, that we have sort of too much overhead? How would a model, a realistic model, look which allows us to design algorithms which do not have these kind of overheads? And this is very interesting. And I would like to note here also that this assumption of having k lanes, so k-way communication out of the node, is by far not at all the same as assuming k-ported communication. So k-ported communication is this assumption that one process or processor can be engaged in k-way communication at the same time, and this is not the same. So yeah, it's a slightly different assumption, and I think this is a very interesting problem. It's interesting. So how do we model this? What are realistic capabilities? And how do good algorithms look, and maybe that even have consequences for good implementation. But this is another work and another talk. So let me just conclude here. I think this is a highly relevant problem. Modern systems, so all these top 500 systems, have these multi-lane capabilities in some way or the other. So how can we design provably good algorithms, and how can we implement them well? Such that to exploit these multiple lanes under reasonable assumptions. So what we did here, we showed these simple decompositions of the MPI collective. So again, MPI collectives are really nicely designed, and they allow exactly using all the MPI functionality, these decompositions into smaller pieces, smaller collective operations, and putting things together and all this. So we saw that this can work. And sometimes it gives algorithms which looks reasonable. Sometimes they have overheads that we would like to get rid of. And we did experimental work based on this, and this gives interesting insight into issues with the MPI collective. Yeah. And the bad thing is, of course, that it turns out that certain MPI libraries are not behaving well compared to what the system should be able to deliver. And we tried, so if you look at our technical reports and things, we have also tried with other MPI libraries. And of course, what we would like to really try is on some of these very large systems which do have multi-lane capabilities, so some of the top 500 systems. Okay, so I hope my talk was understandable, sort of from the technical point of view. This concludes what I wanted to say, so I will take my screen share away, and I'm happy to take questions. So thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you, Jesper, and thank you everyone for listening. So we'll get to questions in just a moment. I do want to advertise briefly our next BCast talk on the 17th of December. This same time slot where we'll have Bing-Sheng He from the National University of Singapore talking about large graph processing on heterogeneous architectures. With that, I think we will go to questions.